last all night. She can turn a small spark into a burning light. She can take a candy, roll it on a tongue.
Okay, in a previous class I tied a poor man's or poor boy's woolly bugger, and now I am going to tie a woolly bugger that I really like. It's this crystal bugger. You can name it whatever you want to. I think I'm going to name it the plumber's crack, because there's just a whole bunch of bad stuff that's coming out of here that looks like it's come from a very bad place. This woolly bugger is not going to catch the cute little pretty trout in the pool or the little smallmouth bass. This thing, with its plumber's crack stuff in it, it is only going to catch big bad fish that are really upset that this ugly looking thing is in their pool. So that's why I like to tie these. They're a little bit more advanced than the regular woolly bugger, but we're going to tie one. Okay, materials. We got Tiemco 300 hook, again size 4 like we did that last poor boy's woolly bugger. We have olive Marabou. You can use any color Marabou that you want. This is olive, and I like olive a lot. We are going to use a big Schlappen hackle feather. There it is. It is not a saddle hackle, it is a Schlappen hackle. It's a rooster hackle, and these are usually used for tarpon flies. I love these for woolly buggers. We're going to use a little bit of crystal flash. That's going to be used on our tail to add a little bit of flash. We're going to use some size 4mm orange beads. These are hot beads. We're also going to use some ultra wire, hot orange wire. Step 1, bead on the hook. The bead's going to have a small hole. It's going to have a big hole. You are going to put the hook point into the small hole like so, and you have to very carefully, if you crimp the barb, this is easier. This is a little gutsy move, but if you keep your fingers clear, you'll be okay. And you push it past the barb, that way you can keep the barb if you want to. Slide that bead up, and then we're going to put it in our jaw. Next, thread. I'm going to use red thread. I also use hot orange thread a lot. I do use black too, but whenever I can use something that makes it look like blood or some kind of injured fish, leech, whatever, I'm always thinking of looking like some kind of wounded badass thing. So next up, Marabou tail. Okay, this is a piece of Marabou. I get my Marabou from Whiting. They've got really good supplies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to gauge this tail. I want this Marabou tail. It's just one little piece of Marabou. It's not real thick. And I want it a little bit longer than the whole hook shank. So there you go. I'm going to gauge that thing up and do it one more time from there. I'm going to exchange hands. I'm going to tie it in over here, but before I do, I know that I don't want this thing to go longer than the front, so I am going to trim it a little bit short, like so. Okay, I'm going to exchange hands. I'm going to tie in my tail, and also I am going to tie in all of this stuff. I'm just going to kind of keep my hand on it, push it all forward, but as you can see, it is not going past my bead. So this is all underbody, because adding a little bit more bulk to the underbody is a good thing. There's our crystal flash. I want to make it about as long as the hook shank, kind of gauging that stuff in, set it down on top of the tail, wrap it in. Oops. Again, I am here to teach you guys how to tie flies that will catch fish. I am not trying to tie the most beautiful thing. In my book, Adirondack Flies, that I wrote, I specifically say I am not a pretty fly tyer, but I just love catching fish, and I love catching fish on flies I tie. So I just get it done. So we got tail, crystal flash, bam. The reason we're going to use a little bit of this wire is because if you're going to take the time to tie a pretty decent fly, you want that thing to stay together. So we're going to end up binding this whole fly with this wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove that end right up into the bead. That's going to add a little bit more bulk, and I'm going to tie in this wire. I am just going to kind of lace it in, bring my thread back to where I started, and I'm done. Notice I don't have any kind of steps or anything in here. It's all staying pretty flat. That's important, because that way your fly isn't like really bumpy, and it stays pretty consistent. Now the next thing we got to do is we got to tie in our Schlappen. It's going to be our hackle and our collar. I grabbed a great big long piece of Schlappen, as you can see here. Now this stuff down here with this quill is really, really thick. That is not going to help us. So I'm going to strip that off, and I'm going to cut it to get rid of that stuff. That's going to remind me how far I can go with this. Now again, like I did on the poor boy's woolly bugger, I'm going to tie this in by the tip. Okay, so I separated some of the feathers. I'm going to hold it in there and pinch it, and I'm going to wrap that in. Now, one of the reasons that we have this wire is because this quill is really not very thick at all. So I'm going to, just for safe measure, I'm going to wrap all that stuff right in there. And that wire that we're going to counter wrap with is going to help out. Now, there's a little spring clip here. Some of you guys have these on your vices. That's for wedging your material in there to hold it. So I'm going to actually do that off camera. You're not going to see that. Next, this is some polar crystal Estaz chenille. So you can use Estaz, you can use this crystally stuff. I'm just going to tie that in by the core. Okay, and then I'm going to advance my thread up to my bead. Now I got to wrap this stuff in, and let me tell you, it's not really easy because it's so hairy. So I'm going to wrap this stuff in, similar to like how I did the poor boy woolly bugger, and I am not going to wrap it perfect, like one wrap after another. I'm going to separate these a little bit and kind of barber pull this material, and every time that I wrap it, see how I kind of grab the material with my left hand? I got Montana and Patton, and somebody's coming in downstairs. I'm going to do this barber pole kind of wrap, and that's going to separate these wraps so that I've got room for my hackle. And I'm not going to go all the way up to the bead. I'm going to leave a little bit of space, drop my thread over a couple times to secure it, and then trim. So I still have wire and hackle. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hackle, and very, very carefully, and wobbling this thing back and forth. This is where you got to kind of persuade this through the plumber butt crack stuff, okay? I am fluffing this up, and then I'm kind of moving it back and forth, making sure that my hackle gets through all that sparkle stuff. Okay? Just like this. I'm just kind of fluffing it, making sure that I get through everything. I'm not doing it one wrap after another, so you got to kind of wobble it and get through this. And then I'm going to come up here, and I still got a fair amount of hackle here left over, which is good. I'll do one more wrap. And I did it with my hands because my hackle was so long. I'm going to do a couple wraps just to secure this stuff. And again, this is not perfect. Doesn't have to be. I got a couple barbules in here that I think I grabbed. I'm just going to free those with my bodkin. There you go. Come on out there. Because you little guys are going to move around in the water. Help us catch a huge brown trout. Okay, so we got all those free. Now, you're going to take your wire, and this time you're going to counter wrap. So you've always been wrapping this way. So there's always been a slant this way. This time you're going to wrap the wire, and you're going to kind of counterclockwise wrap this around. And what that's going to do is that is going to help add a lot more durability to your fly. Now, as you can see, you got to kind of persuade this stuff through here. And if you use regular chenille, and other stuff, it's going to be a lot easier than using this kind of flashy, hairy stuff. But the advantage of the wire is that it's kind of stiff, so you can do what I'm doing, where I'm just kind of fluffing it and pinging it, and like the young kids do, put hair gel in their hair. So there we go. So I've kind of got this thing. Oh, it's looking good. So now I'm just going to wrap in the wire. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of my wire. Now I'm keeping my hackle. I'll show you why. I went right down to the base of the scissors to cut that, so I didn't cut it up and trim it up in the front. So now I'm going to bring my thread. I'm going to bring my thread up and make a couple more wraps here up near the bead. Now all this hackle stuff we are going to use as a collar. So I'm going to grab the hackle by the quill. Oops, that's going to happen to you too. Grab the hackle by the quill. I'm going to pull all that stuff backwards, like so. And I am going to make a nice collar. Oops. And again, that's going to happen to you too. Your hackles are going to pull off your hackle plier. That's just life, man. Just deal with it. So, there we go. Collar. Quill, I'm going to hold that. Trim it. Good to go. And we are going to do a nice little band of thread here. Keep everything nice and secure. Voila. Half hitch this bad boy. It's already looking mean, isn't it? Oh, it's ugly. Ugly is good though, when you're talking flies, man. Just want to eat it myself. Cut that. That thing is looking gross. I love it. Glue. This is glue. Strong stuff. And we're done. That is an ace in the hole, man. Look at the flash and stuff. That thing is not going to be bashful when you plop that thing in a pool. Some smallmouth, largemouth, pike, brown trout, brook trout, rainbow trout, name it. It is going to be like, I want to kill that thing. Get the hell out of my living room.
Feel forever young. She takes her time. She takes her time. She takes